Committee will come to order. We're meeting to consider 11 bills. All have been properly noticed, circulated electronically, along with copies of timely filed amendments, and will be available in the committee repository at docs.house.gov. Late amendments are also circulated electronically. Pursuant to committee rules, members of the committee may submit written opening statements for the record. I ask that members may revise and extend their remarks on the bills to be considered at this markup and have those remarks included in the record. Without objection, so ordered. Without objection, the chair may also declare a recess subject to the call of the chair. Pursuant to Committee Rule 3I and the House Rule 11, Clause 2, I announce that I may postpone further proceedings today on the question of approving any measure or matter or adopting an amendment on which a recorded vote has been ordered. Documents, amendments, or motions must be submitted to HNRC Docs, emailed from a House-maintained email address. Please note that members are responsible for their own microphones. Members can only be muted by staff to avoid inadvertent background noise. I strongly recommend that members joining remotely use the grid view and lock the timer to a location so it remains visible. Members who are experiencing technical problems should immediately inform the committee staff. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize the ranking member, Mr. Westerman, for his opening statement. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Season 1, Episode 2 of Big Cats in Congress. Subtitle is The Left Purge While America Pays. You know, a week ago in this committee, we convened to talk about cats while gas prices and inflation soared. While this crisis has only worsened in the past 7 days, it's as if time stopped and really doesn't exist here on committee. Today, we are still talking about cats. Behind me, you'll see 2 headlines, both from last Wednesday. The cognitive dissonance could not be any clearer. Our constituents are having to make tough sacrifices to fill up their cars, but the best this committee's majority can give them is big cat legislation. It's ridiculous that we're repeating this for the second week in a row. Mr. Chair, you abruptly ended last week's markup by saying, next time we'll be better prepared. By prepared, what I'd hoped you meant was that this committee would come back this week better prepared to address historically high gas prices and other crises facing Americans. Instead, I'm disappointed that this appears you've only just prepared to better shut down the minority's voice. Mr. Chair, our economy is folding under the weight of inflation, exacerbated by gas prices like we've never seen before. Americans from coast to coast are hurting, and there's no end in sight. We've gotten so numb to it that gas hit $5 per gallon this week, and it barely hit the news cycle. But it's not just the gas we put in our cars to drive to work. It's the gas that powers trucks, transporting goods, and the farm equipment harvesting crops. Not to mention the energy required to cool down homes during nationwide heat waves, to power cities, and to manufacture products. As members of the Committee on Natural Resources, we have a particular responsibility to steward America's resources well. Part of that responsibility is overseeing our domestic oil and gas production, ensuring it is done sustainably. Yet this year, when America needs domestic energy more than ever before, this committee's majority has yet to bring a single energy bill to markup. Instead, we spent last week and now this week talking about cats. Mr. Chairman, you might think Americans are focused on lions and tigers right now, but I assure you this is not the case. Don't just take my word for it. Listen to our constituents and members of your caucus. David in Mr. Gray's district told him, "We're struggling to make our bills because everything is so high." Mr. Bench shared how a trucker in his district said he's paying $800 to fill up his rig. Agriculture Committee Chair David Scott said during a hearing this week, "Americans have just about had it. I've watched the news. I don't care which one you watch, even Fox, CNN. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to do something right now about the cost of food and the cost of fuel." Even my Democrat colleague, Ms. Porter, recently shared how she's having to take basic groceries like bacon and cereal out of her shopping cart because prices have gotten too high to afford. There are ways Congress can and should address this crisis, including incentivizing oil and gas leasing, reopening pipelines, and flipping the switch on American energy dominance. I and my colleagues have legislation introduced and ready to go that would do just that and more. Yet when we tried to refocus this markup on the issues that matter, the meeting was adjourned. Now, you've had a whole week to come back and include bills that would unlock American resources and provide immediate relief to struggling families. But we're still talking about cats. That's not Groundhog Day, that's just the Democrat agenda. We have a responsibility as members of Congress to advance sound scientific legislation that meets any crisis head-on. Yet here we are, fiddling while Rome burns. The longer we delay, the worse it becomes. I, along with my Republican colleagues, will continue offering amendments and introducing legislation to reorder this committee's priorities and address the issues facing Americans. Mr. Chair, I urge you to engage with us in these conversations, not shut down the legislative process to push the Democrats' agenda. I look forward to hopefully the debate we will have today, and I yield back.
And thank you very much, Mr. Westerman. I look forward to the discussion today as well. The items, the legislation that is before us at today's agenda has gone through regular order. It's the work of the committee and the subcommittees, and the expectation is that some action needs to be taken on that, and we want to move forward with that. The broader discussion is not about callousness. My colleagues on this side of the aisle recognize the economic hardship that American families are going through, but the root causes of that hardship have to be confronted as well. We cannot blithely just always promote a negative and blame somebody for the situation we're in if we don't look at the root causes of why we're in this situation, why and what are the root causes, and address those root causes. To superficially use the situation economically to promote and to reintroduce past practices that have been detrimental to the issues that confront this committee as well, dealing with the climate crisis, ensuring that our public lands and waters are best utilized for the interests of all Americans. And I think that if in going forward, we need to have an understanding of what the root cause is. And we don't have that understanding, sir. The legislation, even the 6 points that the Republicans are promoting, have been hit as being not based on any science. They're a political blame game and a response with not any basis in science and in structure. One of the things that the Democrats are committed to is not repeating the same mistakes of the last 4 or 5 years. And to do so, and to be able to tap the resources of our public lands and waters in such a way that it does not create a further aggravation of the climate crisis and acceleration, but in fact helps us with that transition to a different clean energy sources for this country. That's where we're at. And that debate is more philosophical than it is about legislation, sir. And but the items before us today are of import. They're import to the members that submitted it, to the constituencies they represent, and to the issues that they have before them. And I want to go forward with them. You know, we're not in denial. We understand there's a situation in front of us, and we and Democrats are promoting ideas to put savings into the American people's pocketbooks, from lowering health care costs, prescription drug costs. And we're not in denial, as many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle seem to believe that January 6th did happen, and that it's had consequences and ramifications across our government, and in particular in this Congress. And the exploration of that root cause and how to prevent it in the future and how to reinforce and strengthen our democracy should be a top tier issue for all of us, irrespective of where inflation is at or gas prices are at. And I hope you join with us in pursuing reasonable acceptance of the facts and truth and dealing with that issue. But that's the political polemics we'll get into if we want to continue to debate this issue based on talking points and narratives and crisis acting. We can continue to do that. But I would prefer today, if at all possible, that we expeditiously move, everybody having the opportunity to speak on the items that are before us today. That is not avoiding an issue, that is dealing with the issues that are before us today. The other point I wanted to make today, because Big Cats being the point of contention, or at least the starting point for amendments and discussion about the issues that you believe are important to part of the political narrative, we're going to move that toward the end of it and move on to start with Mr. Gallegos and then return to the cats, because that consumed 2 hours last time, and I'm assuming it'll consume that equal number of time today. But we do have other pieces of legislation. You see items that reflect about both sides of the aisle that should be dealt with expeditiously. There's already agreement between staffs on a majority and minority that those were items that could go by unanimous consent. I would like to proceed with those as well, return to Big Cats, and finish that discussion, whatever that discussion might end up being.